As certified life coaches with 45 years combined experience in human resources, Jen and Katherine Fry have both experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, both personally and professionally. And what they each know to be true is this: our mental, physical, and emotional health are the essential building blocks in order to thrive and shine in the field of HR. So in a first of its kind podcast, we'll be getting real and to discuss and share what has contributed to both our struggles and successes, with the goal of inspiring women around the globe to stand tall and take the necessary action to both thrive and shine in HR. Here are your hosts, Jen and Katherine.
Wow. Here we are. Welcome to Thrive and Shine HR. It is such a treat to be with everybody today. All of our listeners, Jen, you know how much I look forward to any time I get to spend with you. How are you?
The energy is just flowing today. There are so many
Awesome.
reasons why, but mostly this eclipse that's happening today. So we record this, y'all, on Monday mornings, obviously.
Yes.
And today is a big, big day for a lot of people out there. So I am feeling that. I'm all the way on the other side of the coast in Oregon, but I don't care. This is
You
going to
don't
be
care. You're feeling
a
it.
very, very special day. So I am feeling it. How are you, Katherine?
I'm feeling it too. I went out for my morning run this morning, and the sun hitting the peaks where I live was extra special this morning. It was just gorgeous out. It's still gorgeous out there. I'm literally looking at Marble Peak right now, and which is the name of my consulting business, and it's glorious out there. So I'm so excited, which sounds a little bit strange. I was thinking about this morning. I'm so excited to talk about mental health. I really am. And I just think there is so much that as HR practitioners, we aren't aware of when it comes to our mental health. We don't even know what we don't know. And for me, this episode number 11, is everything. Because if we don't have our mental health, we are drowning in HR. And I'm just so happy to be here. So maybe a little bit odd, but it's true. I'm just like geeking out this morning. What about you? What do you
Yeah.
think about this topic today?
Absolutely. There was when it comes to prepping for an episode, which we both love to do, but this one in particular, I was like, where do I begin? Right? Because when it comes to mental health, that's like you and I have talked about it so many times. This is not what we were taught, right? Like I
No.
turned 50 this year, and it's really only been within the last few years that I have really understood things that I didn't get. I didn't understand how much mental health is everything, right? It's like
Yeah.
everything. And so, these are like completely way off probably stats and figures, but it's like I've heard this so many times where they say we have anywhere from like 60 to 80,000 thoughts in a day, right?
Yes.
And of those thoughts, there can be anywhere from like 80 to 90% of our thoughts repeat on a regular basis. And then in addition to that, you stack that on top of up to 80% of our thoughts that repeat are negative, are not really helpful, that are worries, that are doubts, that are something holding us down in some way. And so
Yes.
there's the reality, right? That we're not fully conscious most of the time of what is going on in the background. And so mental health is really that's where it's at, to really start to kind of pay attention to what it was we really weren't given the tools to understand.
Totally. Totally. And that's where thought work comes into play. That's where choosing our thoughts, being mindful of our thoughts. And we do have the power to choose our thoughts 100% of the time. And those thoughts will be true for us. And
Yeah.
that was the most mind blowing thing that I had ever learned, and one of the most empowering things that I had ever learned. So I think that's why I'm so excited to be here today, because I didn't know this. I didn't know this until 3 years ago, and my life changed exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So before we kind of go too far down the road, I'm curious how you define mental health. So we're all kind of dealing with the same definition, so to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious why I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but why is it so important to cover this topic with HR professionals specifically? So let's start with the definition. What's your definition of mental health?
So I define mental health no differently than I would define our physical health or, emotional health. And it's really around kind of the fitness of our being, right? And so our mental being is really our mental state. And that comes down to our thoughts and feelings. And
Yeah.
so if we are, really tuned in to ourselves and being really truly honest, then I think doing that inventory or really being clear around where we fall on that
Mhm.
on that spectrum, I think is something that so many of us don't do. And so, yeah, mental health is really about, just like we go and we stand on a scale and we, do all these things from the physical, health
Ooh.
standpoint that has become, part of, what we know to be preventative care. It's really also taking that same sense of awareness to our brains, which is, still very new and still very kind of like modern, but that's where I believe things are headed more and more and more and more. And I'm truly just so excited to be a part of that. So what about you? I'd love to kind of hear where
I
your
mean,
head is.
I love that you bring up mental fitness. I use that term all the time. And when you talk about not doing it, right?
Mhm.
I think it is, we don't know that we need to be doing it.
No,
I was a
sure.
competitive athlete as a child. I have done physical fitness my entire life. And I thought that by moving my body, there's the correlation to mental health. I didn't realize, like, the older I got and I kept up my physical fitness, my mental health was deteriorating. And I had no idea
Yeah.
that there was this thing as such as mental health. And now that I know that it's not even that I need to do it, I truly get to do it. And it has become such a part of my daily routine that it's not something I have to put on a list. I just do it. And I have never been so happy in my entire life at the age of 48. Like, life is truly getting better and better and better. And it's not BS, and it's not a load of shit, and it's not me posting on social media acting like I'm living my best life and it's a falsity. I am truly living my best life because I understand thought work and I do it every single day. And I just want that for the women in HR because, and here I'm getting to my answer, I'm answering my own question.
Good.
The reason I want to cover this with HR professionals is because I see this with my clients. I see this in your Facebook community. I see this in my Facebook communities. When you're in HR and your head is down and you're in reactive HR and you're in go, 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 and you are constantly being usurped by other people. Hey, do you have a second? I need you in this meeting. All of the things, you truly do not know that you need thought work. You just don't
Mhm.
even have the time to pause to say, oh my God, something needs to change, because you're just go, 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 move, 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 react, react, react. And you don't know that you can get out ahead of it. You don't even realize that HR can be totally different. I just see it. I see the evidence in both of our Facebook groups. And I just want to jump through the screen and help people because I know I can, because I know I have the skill set to do it. And I care so much about people's mental health. And I may get into some stories on that today. I'm curious how, for you, in the course of your career, how has the topic of quote unquote mental health changed within your professional HR career?
Gosh, I mean, so much, but I think, in the last 4 years, really just exponentially for
Yeah,
everybody, right? Without
totally.
having any control over it. And then you add on to it what I have had control over, which is, the active, movement towards, being more conscious and aware and understanding how I was getting myself tripped up, holding myself back, and so many things. So what was really funny, I was sharing with you, we before going live today, that yesterday we were talking about the eclipse, and I was lucky enough in 2017 to be a part of the total eclipse that came through Oregon. And so after we got off our prep call, I was like I was in a mode because it was one of the best experiences of my life being a part of that total eclipse in 2017. And so for everyone who has an opportunity to experience this event that's happening, today, a little bit later today, it's unbelievable. And so I put together a post and I went back and I pulled pictures. So I was like, oh yeah, my husband took this and we took this, and
Totally.
went back and pulled all these great pictures. And what I did not find, now, not surprisingly, as I'm thinking about it the next day, what I did not find is a picture of myself at that time, right? This is 2017. This is way pre me being awake. So I was
Yes.
more overweight. I was drinking heavily. And so I think there were maybe just a couple pictures of me from that whole time during the eclipse, but both of them were unusable. And what was just so funny looking back now is like, this was like one of the best memories that I have in my life. And what
Mm.
helped, I think, start a shift for me. It clicked yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh, that experience of seeing that total eclipse and the energy of that moment was so life-changing that I think that
Mm.
might have been the first phase of my awakening. So it was really kind of cathartic to actually write that yesterday. This blog that I put up on Medium. So I'll get a link in the show notes because I'm really excited. That's my first blog I put in a year. Um,
Yeah.
so it was really, really cool to actually kind of think back to that time, and then also to think back to the me at that time who was so lost, so unhappy. So, all of these, the way that I was living my life, I was in such a burnout HR job at that time, such a burnout. It was right before actually I had left and started a role that was amazing for me at Dutch Bros Coffee. But before that, I was working in hospitality, and talk about a burnout culture. And
Right.
so, yeah, so here I was in August of 2017 when we went to that eclipse, and I was beyond exhausted. I mean, just you could just see it in my eyes if I were to share a picture someday, maybe. But anyway, so like when it comes to me and mental health and how it's evolved for me as an HR professional, like I can look at my memories, I can look back to my history and truly be able to see a completely different person who was completely lost, who was completely afraid, who completely did not believe she was good enough. I mean, like
Yeah.
all of the things that come up, but like
Yeah.
feel that at that time because I was pushing myself to limits that were just not reasonable. How can you possibly show up as your best self when you're
Yeah.
pushing yourself to such limits? And so, yeah. So now here I am in 2024 wanting to give that girl just the biggest hug, right? Like you just want to
Right.
give the biggest hug ever. So yeah, like I gave a long answer, but that's my story.
Well, I love that answer. And this is what I love about the two of us doing this podcast, because it only reinforces the point that everybody's mental health is different. Everybody's journey is different. And those pivotal moments are different for all of us. I have never had an experience with astrology like you have. Like what you just shared has not been my journey at all. And I love that you experienced that. I love that you've had this awakening, because that
Amazing.
obviously was meant to happen for you. And what has happened for me, it's totally different and was meant to happen for me. So I love sharing our experiences. And I think it's so important for our listeners to know that whatever sort of awakening you're having, or if that word awakening doesn't work for you, that's okay. Just being open to the idea that mental health, thank God, kind of going back to the question, like, thank God it's mainstream now. Like Jen, what you were saying earlier, like that COVID was a blessing for so many of us. You know, we were almost forced to start talking about mental health. And I think back to 1997 when I started in HR. Um, it was mental health, like you did not talk about mental health at work.
Do not dare.
Do not dare.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing a therapist, don't tell anyone. And the coaching industry had barely begun. So it's just wild to me how far we have come. And that, you know, as HR practitioners, we're constantly promoting our EAP. We're constantly reminding our employees to work on your mental fitness, hire a therapist, go to your free sessions through EAP. A lot of EAPs now use coaching because coaching is so different from therapy. Therapy is about fixing your past. Coaching is about, here I am in the present moment. What do I want the future to be? And then putting your plan together, right? So I love that all of that is welcomed in the workplace. But what I do find is that HR practitioners are the last people to use the EAP. The last people. And the last people to, because we're just so worried about caring for everybody else, caring about the organization. And we truly are the last people to fill our own cup, which I find super interesting.
Yeah, no, I do too. I do too, but I get it. I completely get it because I was there for so long and now I'm not that person, right? So
Yeah.
you know that I'm actually taking the next few days off
Hell
for
yeah.
the job that I have because
Yes.
of that very reason of, you know, I've now been in the role almost 9 months
Yeah.
and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love the
Yes.
company. I love the culture. I love the people, but it is also very much part of burnout culture. And
Yeah.
I have managers who are working 70, 80 hours a week, 7 days a week
Right.
with that old school badge of honor, not because they love it, but because it's what they do. Right. It's
Yeah.
because of what they know. And so I got to a point where I finally looked at my boss last week and I said, I got to step away. So
Yeah.
that is such a hard thing to do, right? One, to acknowledge it within ourselves, to like really own it, be truthful within ourselves of what we really need in order to be able to be the best. That's step one, right? And then step two is this next level of like going to my boss, of going to a leader and being able to say, I need to step away.
Yes.
And so that is, I think, when it comes to mental health and when it comes to the evolution of how far we've come in HR,
Yeah.
I think that's where it's at. Like we're really to that point where, doing that gut check within ourselves of where each of us fall. Like, where do we fall? Am I having a trouble even admitting within myself what's going on? Like, am I not being
Yes.
fully honest of what's truly present? And then secondary, am I being honest with others? Am I communicating truthfully and honestly about how I really am? And if not, why? What am I afraid? What are the fears holding me back? Because right, like that's where it comes down is
Yeah.
this idea of these things that are holding us back are actually can be blown up, and
Yeah.
that's what we're here for. So yeah,
Yeah.
this part of kind of how far HR has come and how far I think we still have to come. It's a daily, it's every step we can take, right? But continuing to kind of have that awareness within ourselves, like I did over these last couple of weeks. This was not easy. It's not easy to finally kind of put that flag up and say, I gotta walk away.
Yeah.
But yet I know deep within myself it's going to be okay. I know that at the end of the day, if if I'm not for them, then I'm not for them, and it'll be okay. And so
Yeah.
all of those things I think have just taken the thought work that you were talking about earlier, being able to do that and recognize, that's how we kind of get to that point where I can now be grounded. with my decision. I can
Mm.
feel comfortable with it. I can feel clear about it. I don't feel as though I'm doubting it. I'm second guessing it. You know, how often
Mhm.
in my past, when I went, I'll never forget. I will never forget when I went. I'm like looking at my blog article right now. I'll never forget when we were driving away to go to see that eclipse. There was a part of me that felt like, well, if I stayed at the hotel, they have glasses and it's not 100%, but I could still see part of it. And, it's just so busy right now. I almost didn't go. I almost didn't go to the most incredible experience I've ever had in my
Oh
life.
my
So
God, Jen.
yeah, totally. And so that I think to me hit me like just a bullet yesterday, where that's how bad sometimes we can get in our own heads because we will so, kind of be like driven into this narrative without even really being able to see the truth of it. So I went all over the place, but I feel like there was a good nugget or two in there.
There's so many great nuggets in there, 100%. And I just, um, you're making me reflect back on my career, and I want to talk about that. How our mental health has evolved over our careers, and I am, I am in this really personally with my mental health. I'm in this really amazing state right now, and I truly attribute it to my systems and the thought work I do every single morning. And I am in this state of maintenance, so to speak, because I am in a really good place. I haven't always been in a really good place, and I definitely want to cover that today. My my clients are always saying like, I want your energy. I want to feel like I want to experience that. And if my clients only knew what I used to be like, it's a totally different world. And I am a consultant. I'm not in the 9 to 5 HR realm anymore. It's a totally different experience. I don't have a regular paycheck. I don't have that consistency. I don't have those benefits coming in. So I could look at that as a very scary thing. But for me, my whole purpose, like I just am so laser focused on my clients and helping my clients achieve results and helping my clients understand their why and helping them develop their own systems of staying on top of their thought work. And for me, I don't work anymore. And I know that for like if I had been talking to myself from 3 years ago, I would have been like bullshit. Bullshit, you don't work anymore. But it's true. It is truly true because I love what I do for work and I love how I spend my time outside of work. So I am in a place where I've never been before, and I'll talk about it in a little bit because I think our listeners are going to be like, how did you go from like your lowest of low to your highest of high? Like, how did you even do that? And I'd love to share that. But before I dive into that, I want to know how your mental health has evolved over your career. You've spoken to it a little bit, but can you speak to that for our listeners?
Yeah, so 20, we'll go back to 2017. We'll kind of
Okay.
go from there because I think that would work out perfectly. So eclipse, right? Big
Yeah.
moment for me. The following year is when I then took a leap and jumped over to Dutch Bros Coffee, where
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I think in terms of being able to see how it can be, how a culture can be, how it was a pretty amazing experience for me, but I was still lost, right?
Oh,
So for
yeah.
anyone who doesn't understand or who doesn't know, Dutch Bros, they are very much about people. And it was
Yeah.
started with two brothers with a little coffee cart in Grants Pass, Oregon. And they were very, very much about kind of the people centric at the core. And for my 20 years prior to coming into this role, it was the first time I was ever in an HR role that really, I think, got it in that way, right? Like the
Amazing.
people came first.
Oh,
And so when I came into the position, I was still, though, a lost little girl, right? So I had a lot of insecurities. I got the role because I was good, right? I got the role because I was good enough. But yet in
Yes.
my head, I was nowhere near good enough, right?
Totally.
The first interview coming on board, I had no idea like how good I was and really doubted and second guessed myself constantly. So in my
Constantly.
almost 3 years working for the organization, I never fully believed in myself. I never fully like showed up as I would have today, but that's okay. So anyway, I was there for 3 years, and almost halfway through my time there, I was able to go to a conference where I got to see Simon Sinek live. I think I've shared it a couple of times, but it was one of those moments where I kind of felt something shift inside me in terms of like
Oh,
greater purpose in my life, being able to have some kind of podium, which we now have. So like it started this trajectory of like really wanting to like push myself in different ways, but I was still lost. I was
yeah.
still like caught up in, so much in my head. And so I finally then ended up going through a certification for coaching, thinking
Yeah.
originally I was going to do it working for the coffee company. And rather, I decided I wanted to go out, on my own and do coaching.
Amazing.
And yeah, so from there, that's when it started. Because, like you said earlier, you're not, it's just not going to happen unless you commit to some daily effort, right? And part of that daily effort is just as important as drinking 8 cups of water a day, just as important as getting
Mhm.
8 hours of sleep a day. It has to do with the checking in with ourselves. So when I started to do that and started to do it consistently and daily, that's when things really started to change for me. So I think that, you had said that, everything has kind of shifted and changed. And that is definitely the case for me. And it's also it can be a daily grind. I mean, I am in my life right now, in my personal life and professional life, there's a lot of turbulence. And
Mhm.
that is going to happen sometimes in our lives, regardless of if it's personal or professional. And so when it comes down to the growth and how far I've come mental, with understanding, being self-aware, that sort of thing, I am now like to a position, I think 5 years ago, the 2017 pre-eclipse Jen
Totally.
would
Totally.
have never been able to kind of sit here in front of you today, grounded, comfortable, and like, I got this. It's bumpy. It is
Yes.
bumpy right now, but I got
Yes.
it. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get off this call. I'm gonna do a quick meditation, then I'm gonna move on. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's what it is. The turbulence is never gonna stop. The things
The
outside of our
turbulence
control are
does
never gonna
not
stop.
stop.
What we have to
Yes.
do is learn how to
Yes.
we gotta learn how to ride the waves, and so that's where I can see so clearly from 2017 to that, where I'm at now,
Yeah.
is completely learning how to ride the waves.
Completely learning how to ride the waves. I remember I went on vacation to Costa Rica. I hired a surf instructor. I live in Colorado. We are super landlocked here. And I think the movie was called Blue Crush. I'm dating myself. I'm always proud to date myself. It's fine. It's a movie that I think came out in the 2000s, and it was like this power pack of young girls, these surfer girls. And I was like, that looks really fun. I want to learn how to surf. So I go to Costa Rica, and my surf instructor was like, don't fight the wave. You need to move with the water. And I think about that analogy all the time. I think about the person who founded Patagonia. I can't remember his name. Patagonia, the clothing company.
Yes.
Let my people go surfing. I mean, there's just so many analogies related to that. And I don't know. I love that you shared that. And I had a client last week who I know our listeners can't see my hand moving right now, but she was explaining, like, if you think about a heart rate monitor, she was explaining, she was like, just these massive shifts, just up and down, her turbulence.
Mm,
Like if she were in a plane, buckled in, she was like hitting the top of that seatbelt. She just felt completely out of control. And the definition I found looking up mental health, the definition for mental health that I found that I love is the ability to manage existing conditions and stressors while maintaining ongoing well-being and happiness. Right? Because the fact is, in HR, whether you're literally in the 9 to 5 world or if you're a coach, like life is turbulent. And it's really knowing how to manage those existing conditions and stressors. Truly, truly. And that's the ticket to happiness. It truly is. We're not going to be happy all the time. When somebody we love, in my last 9 to 5 role, I had somebody pass away every single year. I had 5 coworkers pass away. We were a mid-sized organization. I knew these people personally. One of them was a friend, and he passed away in an avalanche.
Oh my gosh.
And I think of him all the time. I think of him when I see sparkles in the snow. I saw sparkles in the snow yesterday. I thought of him. And I have become friends with his mom, right? The person who had to come into my office in HR. We had to talk about benefit. Her son had just passed away. I had to share with her and her entire, her other 2 sons were there. Her husband was there. And we had to talk about the fact that oh gosh, I may start crying. She was his beneficiary. And just all of those really hard things that we go through in HR, heading into that conversation, I couldn't take away his death. Here I was the person I was grieving the loss of my friend. And to witness a mother's grief and the father who was in complete denial, just all of those things. How could I manage my stressors in that moment? And I feel for the women in HR who don't know how to do the thought work to stay calm, to look after your well-being in those moments. It's just a power tool that if you don't know it's out there, you'll continue to just drown in HR when we're dealing with those really heavy things. Really heavy things. So I'm going to stay. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to say, oh gosh, I'm sorry that, that happened, but what a, it's so amazing sometimes where I think that we've been placed in situations to be able to, to be able to be there for people in such, such a beautiful way. And so it's like, as you share that, as heartbreaking as that was,
yes,
what a beautiful thing to yeah. So I was kind of like filled with like conflicting emotions. I'm like, yes, it's sad, but oh, like in HR, sometimes we're given gifts like that.
absolutely.
And I truly believe that when, we can really do that work within ourselves, showing up for those moments. I had one not too long ago where, I can show up and be so much more present with that pain.
Yeah.
And that's really, really tough to do. But what you shared, I think so many others can relate to. And, that's real life. That is real life being in HR, that these moments are going to happen, and being able to like be there in that moment and experience what you experienced in a way that can, be full of compassion and care for the individual. I think, it takes sometimes that inner strength that I know for myself. Even as hearing you talk, I was like, oh, I don't know if I could have done that at a time in my career. And now, I'm like, oh my gosh, if that happens, I'll be ready. I'll be ready. But it's so tough. So it's
right. And I think that's why it's just so important for both of us to be so far into our careers, just having that new set of skills. And my mental health over my career has shifted tremendously. At 25, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's an autoimmune disease directly related to stress, because I started in HR at 22, super stressed out, right? Panic attacks. They didn't happen often, but they happened infrequently in my 30s. And then early in my 40s, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. So my health was plummeting. And there I was getting top reviews at work. I was told I was really good at my job. And what people didn't know was underneath the surface, the thought that the narrative I had on repeat my entire life was, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart. I'm not smart. And I know that thought came from, I had a speech impediment as a kid, and I was diagnosed with a learning disability in the 7th grade. So I carried that thought with me. And I literally told myself, you have to work harder than everybody else because you're not smart, which means I went in early. I pushed myself so hard. I would stay late. I would work weekends. I was a total perfectionist. My emails had to be perfect. And I just would overthink, and I would overwork in HR. And I did not realize that narrative of I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, all of those narratives were leading to health complications in my life. And the evidence was there in my face for my entire career. And it wasn't until, Jen, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I was stung by wasps. I fell into a wasp nest, a ground wasp nest in the backcountry.
Oh my gosh.
About midway through COVID. And thank God I had been diagnosed with asthma. Here's another one. My body's telling me you're not well. I was diagnosed with asthma out of the blue during COVID. I thought I had COVID. And I go to the doctor, they're like, you don't have COVID, you've got asthma, girl. Like, what? I can't believe you're an ultra runner. I can't believe you're out there running 50 miles. You have asthma. And I was like, say what? I have asthma. So anyway, there I am, middle of the backcountry, out adventuring. I'm not even on a trail. I'm in the middle of the Colorado Rockies, middle of nowhere. I fell into a hive of ground wasps. I fell onto wasps. They swarmed my body. I was stung all over my body. I am in the middle of nowhere. I threw my shirt off, and I'm very self-conscious of my body. I was like, gotta get it, like, get these, like, get away from me. And my friend said they could see all the wasps around me. And I ran up to my friend, Tim, and I said, Tim, do you have Benadryl? Do you have Benadryl? And he's like, no, none of us had Benadryl. And I had my inhaler, and I took a couple puffs of my inhaler. And when we eventually got to the ER hours later, I was not in anaphylactic shock, but I was in anaphylaxis. Oh, wow. It was very dire. And, they epied, antihistamine all over. I'm now obviously deathly allergic to wasps and everything except the honeybee. So I had a quasi near-death experience. And that experience for me was a wake-up call, kind of like what you're talking about with the eclipse.
Yeah.
My experience being in the hospital, looking at my life and saying, I could have died today. What am I doing with my life? I am drowning in HR. I just felt like I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm pushing. I'm putting all this energy into work, and I'm freaking drowning. And I'm tired of being the complaint department. I'm tired. I'm just so tired. I'm exhausted. What am I doing with my life? And that for me was like your version of the eclipse. That's when I hired a coach. My coach taught me that you don't have to stay stuck in these cycles of negative thinking. You don't. You can choose different thoughts. And because I learned thought work, I healed my relationship with my dad. My thoughts about my father, I healed it quickly. It happened like this. And I was like, whoa, if that can happen in my relationship with my dad, how does this apply in the workplace? Right? So I was able to do so much healing through thought work. And I'm so glad that I had that experience. It was super traumatic, but because I understand thought work, I experienced something called post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress syndrome. So for all the listeners, Google post-traumatic growth, because you can actually have just the most like aha moment of your life that puts you down the path that you're meant to be on. And I truly believe I was meant to be stung by all of those wasps, because now I quite literally don't work a day in my life. And I love my life at work and outside of work. And thank God I was stung by all those wasps. Truly. Isn't that wild?
I'm crying, I'm laughing, I'm leaping for joy. Like that was the best story.
Had I ever told you that?
I think you very brushed over it. And I think that you had said, yeah, at some point we're going to talk about this. And I'm like, okay.
Apparently it was today.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, because what a like just powerful way to show like how much you can make a change from a single moment. And
Amen.
and wow. That, I mean that like
And
my
and
here
then
I am,
there's
my side is this eclipse. I was like, wow, it was amazing. And your side was like still the same type of power that can come from it. Really, it's about like wake up, wake up.
wake up. Pay attention. That's the other thing I work with my clients on. And I call them, I swear I heard this from Oprah, like they're whispers. I love the word
Oh
whisper.
yeah.
Are you paying attention? Because
Yeah.
the whispers are happening.
To
For so
you.
long in my HR career, it was like when an employee would come into my office and have an employee relations issue, if there was consternation, I freaking loved it. It was my favorite part of HR. So now I do that all day long with my clients. My clients who are like stuck in survival mode and they want to get to thrival mode in HR,
Mhm.
I help them get there very quickly. So I have taken the part of HR that I love and I do it all day, every day. And I'm just on cloud nine because I'm not depleted at work. I get energy from helping my clients in this way. And it's just the coolest thing ever. And had I not been stung by all of those wasps, I never would have taken the time to say, what the hell are you doing with your life? You do not love your job. Why not love your job? You're 45 years old. You've put in the time. Let's explore what's next for you. Let's explore HR 2.0 for you. And I
Amen.
did.
Amen. That's like
Amen.
that's the courage, right? The courage to go deep and to really pull out the truth of it, right? What needs to change? What needs to happen to make that change? So,
I
woohoo.
love it. I love it. So speaking of courage, when you, and I love that you use that word, you inspire me to, I love the word courage because it's so directly correlated with the skill of confidence. I think
Mhm.
courage precedes confidence, and I help my clients develop their skill of confidence like day in and day out. So I'm curious what like specific strategies do you have that you recommend for our listeners in terms of maintaining really good mental health in HR?
Mm. Gosh, one of them is really around that honest inventory. And I think
Yes.
when I finally was it's like there's not a single person on this planet who's going to be able to like know your truth. And the knowing of our own truth around, are we really, happy in our work environment? Are we
Yes.
happy in our home environment? Are we thriving in these environments? Like what really is it? And so you and I have talked over and over again about talking to different clients and just being in HR for so long. You'll just hear this broken record over and over and over again of people who are so exhausted, so burnt out, so tired of not feeling valued and appreciated and seen and heard. And
Yeah.
yet the narrative that will come up immediately will be some reason why it can't change, some reason why they're too late, some reason why they're too old, some reason why they're not enough. And it's like that narrative, I think that inventory that we must do with ourselves is questioning these goddamn stories.
Yeah.
Because if we're in a job 5, 10, 15 years and we still don't feel seen, we still don't feel heard, what are you doing? What is it we're really doing? And I think it's really about like starting to ask those difficult questions, because the reality of it is that we are the ones that are going to have to make that change. And I know, like, yeah, I could go down so many different paths of that, but I think starting with that gut check, and don't do it alone.
Yes.
Like, find a good friend, find somebody in your life who you feel like sees you, and really be able to say, hey, you know what? Can we get some coffee? Can we get some tea? Can we chat? Because I am really feeling unease. I'm feeling unease,
Mm.
and I really want to kind of check in on what is true for me. And that, I think, could be something that could be just life changing in and of itself. And then from there, I'll start going into your coaching program. Like there's so many different resources and things available to us
Yeah.
once we can actually see the movement that needs to happen. Really, it's just about pick your flavor, right? It's about like finding that flavor that's going to help inspire you to take the steps. Because when you talk about courage, I'm like going off now, but it's like coming in. I'm just going off. But it's like when you find that it is the courage that's going to be needed to start taking those steps, because now you are grounded in your truth, that will require fear. That is going to require you to recognize that it's scary for obvious reasons, because it's different, because it's new, because it's change, and then taking the steps anyway, right? Because that's
Yeah.
truly what courage is. Courage is feeling the fear and then moving forward anyway, right? You
Right.
can call me courageous all day long, but if I'm actually not taking action, instead I'm just sitting here going, yeah, you should do this and you should do that, and not actually like living it, that's not courage. So I think it's about also like showing up as like with that authenticity, and so you can't really fully get there unless you know what that is, who you are, like I
Yeah.
go back to the Julia Roberts movie, The Runaway Bride, where it's like she had no idea how she liked her eggs until she like was by herself for a while and like could finally like be like, how do I like my eggs? Right? We have to know thyself. And if you know thyself,
Ah.
everything else can start to kind of come from that. So I went off, but I'm
Okay,
really
I am just having this visual of Julia Roberts running through that field in that movie.
on the horse.
And yeah, I mean, I'm dying right now. I love that you brought that up. You
Oh,
brought that up.
well,
So for
tell
all
me.
of our younger listeners, you may not know the movie we're talking about. For our older listeners, you're probably laughing right there with us. I love it.
Well, what about you, Catherine? Like, where do you start? Where would you start with someone who's listening to this and watching this and like, wow, I think something is finally clicking. Where do
Yeah.
they start?
I want to echo your tidbit that you shared. If you have a friend who helps you become a better human, go to that friend, invite them to coffee, have that conversation. If you have a tendency to commiserate with your friends, if your friends say things to you like, oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's awful. I mean, that's just life, right? That's just how it's going to be. Um, oh, your husband's treating you like shit. Oh, your boss is a narcissist. Oh, you had to fire 10 people. That's fucking terrible. Let's go get a couple cocktails. I do not recommend you hang out. You call that friend. And
I'm
here's
just
why,
dying right now. That yes, yes, yes,
right?
yes. Keep
Here's why.
going.
Who we choose to surround ourselves with matters. It's why I created the Facebook group Empowered Human Resources very intentionally, because I do believe there are people out there who are well-meaning. I promise you, your friend who is saying, oh my God, that's really terrible. Let's go drink a bottle of wine. They are well-intentioned. They are not a bad human being, but there are people who can actually help you become a better human. There are people who can actually help you develop the thought work, who can get you out of that misery. Commiseration is literally, think about that word, commiseration. We're sharing our misery together. And I just submit for your consideration that it doesn't have to be that way. Who you surround yourself with matters. So if you do have a friend who calls you out on your shit, okay, and they help you get to the next level, you sit there and say, okay, what is the optimal outcome I want? What am I looking toward? And what steps do I need to take to get there? If you have a friend who can help you do it all day long. If you don't have someone in your life who allows you to be super honest, super vulnerable, I recommend hiring a coach. And I recommend finding a coach that you just meet them and you're like, that's my person. Because coaches are very different. Jen and I just depicted that, right? Our personalities are very different. Our approach to coaching is very different. And that's the beautiful thing, because all humans are really different. So you have to find the right coach for you, right? Now, therapy is for somebody who has some sort of a diagnosis, right? If you've had childhood trauma and you want to resolve that childhood trauma, that's where therapy comes in. Coaching can be a complement to that, but coaching is all about looking ahead, looking at what you want, putting a very specific roadmap together to get you to where you want to be. That's what it is. So some low-hanging fruit for our listeners today, I would say, notice your thoughts, be really honest about your thoughts. And if your thoughts sound something like, I can't, I don't know how, if there's a lot of blame, my boss is a jerk, or my ADP system is just the worst and I can't fix it, and you're just stuck in that sort of survival thinking, my biggest hack is to say, what do you want? What do you want to be experiencing, right? Well, I want to be a problem solver. I want to fix these ADP issues. Then great. What step do you need to take to get there? Because if you continue to drown in those thoughts of ADP sucks, ADP sucks, ADP sucks, you're going to experience suckage. The hack is to say, what do I want to be experiencing? And how, therefore, do I need to show up? That's my biggest hack. Some people will walk away from this episode saying, I got it. Most people will say, I can't do that on my own. I don't have the coaching skills, right? So tomorrow in HR Empower Hour, I'm going to teach my ethos method. So if anybody's really interested in learning a method to actually get yourself out of disempowered thinking and choose more empowered thoughts and thereby taking more empowered action, come to HR Empower Hour tomorrow. I believe it's workshop number 28 or 29. I've been teaching a weekly workshop since October 3rd of 2023. And we move the needle. Like Jen was saying earlier, the courage to take action is everything. And I invite any of our listeners into my coaching program. I told Jen this yesterday. Q1 for me in my business, I was very focused on a consulting client that I have. I had a lot of work I needed to be doing in Q1. I was very, very focused on that client, which, by the way, I have several. When I say a client, it's an organization, and I think I'm coaching 8 people in that organization alone. Right. And then I have my private coaching business. And in my private coaching business, I have 2 programs. One is the HR Success Program. And I help early to mid-level HR professionals develop their confidence, stress less, and thrive more at work. So that's one program I have. And then the other program is my HR 2.0 program. So it's people who are like my and Jen's age, you know, we're senior level professionals. We're burned out and we want to live our best midlife by thriving in or evolving out of HR. So I have two separate programs and I have the capacity to bring on 6 new clients this month. So I'm so excited to be letting people know about the program and welcoming them into the program if I'm the right coach for people, because I may not be, and I'm totally okay with that, but I am definitely the right coach for some people.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that because, yeah, I mean, it's what you do and you're so freaking amazing at it. So it's
It's so
like,
fun.
yeah, I think, sharing that you have some openings, I hope they get swiped up as fast as possible. People do not delay on that.
I'm super pumped. I can't wait. I'm just like energetically, and maybe it's the eclipse. I don't know because I don't know as much about eclipses as you do, but I'm just like jumping out of my skin. So excited to bring 6 new women into my programs. I'm so excited. Can't tell. Um,
Amazing.
I think the other thing, kind of going back to some low-hanging fruit, is developing that skill of confidence.
Mhm.
Confidence is a skill. And I really, really know that thought work, thought intelligence, it's the precursor to emotional intelligence. And once we understand that we do have the power to choose our thoughts, our whole lives can totally change. So just developing that, I mean, that precursor, that skill of what if I can choose my thoughts? I mean, that can be a step for some people in and of itself. So just really understanding and really going back to your point of awareness, if you find yourself in this pattern that you're beating yourself up all the time. Those are just thought patterns. It's called neuroplasticity. And you literally can change and develop new neural pathways in your brain to think differently. You don't have to stay stuck in those thought patterns of, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Whatever those thought patterns are, you can literally, like, for those of you who know and have used record players before, it's like a record player, like a scratch on a record, excuse me. Like, it's just this, it doesn't have to continue. You can literally flip the record over, put the needle back on, and truly develop new neural pathways in your brain that are filled with thoughts that aren't toxic positivity. It's not like, I'm the best person ever. That's not what we're talking about. It's thoughts that are useful and true, and that just open up a whole new world of possibility.
Yeah. You had mentioned it's so interesting because I think when, like for your example that you gave earlier of when you were a little girl and you've kind of then grown up throughout your life, not thinking you were smart enough and good enough because of, what you were told and the disability and all of that. But those are that's the deep stuff
Oh, hell yeah.
that like, I think so many of us, we've come to like believe it so much. I think I
Oh, yeah.
heard, a coach of mine say this, a thought that you think enough becomes a belief. And if you believe it enough, you like feel like you know it, right? Like he was talking about like if you're in a plane and you're about to land and the
Yeah.
pilot comes on and the pilot says, I think we're going to be able to land versus I believe we're going to be able to land versus I know we're going to be able to land. And
Boom.
that, I think, when you can start to recognize that as ourselves, there are different things that we now believe about ourselves that we might even think we know, right? And that's what you were talking about. Like sometimes people are so like, oh, I can't change that thought about myself because it's like so ingrained.
So deep. Yes.
And so I think the key is where to start, right? You're not going to go from I completely think I'm a piece of shit
Yeah.
to I think I'm the best person ever. You have to start kind of peeling that back and
Yes.
little by little starting to recognize, well, what exactly is that? Why is it that I believe I know this to be true about myself? And is it? Right? It's starting to question some of these things that perhaps we may have actually come to believe our
Yes.
truth about ourselves. And
Yes.
that's where the real beauty in all of this comes in. Is like all of that stuff that feels like it's untouchable is actually very touchable. And it just needs that support. It needs
Yeah.
coaching. It needs some way to start shaking that out. Because many times I know for myself, I was not able to really see what was under the surface about what I really believed
Hmm.
until I actually had somebody that said, "Tell me more about that." Let's
Totally.
tell me more about that, because why is it that you believe that to be true?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then it starts to kind of flow in a way that helped release it. And so everything that you said resonated so strongly with me, because that is the low hanging fruit is the way to start. And then from there, it can start just kind of going a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper.
Totally.
So finally you get to a place where you're like, wait a minute, I get to choose what I believe.
Yes. And here, I mean, I want to drive that point home because just like 3 years ago for me, 3 years ago, when that wasp sting incident happened, I truly still believed as an adult that I was not smart enough. I was not smart enough. Period. That was my narrative on repeat. 3 years ago. And I believed it to be so true. I couldn't see that it was possible that I was actually smart. Okay. So once I saw that it was a thought that I had chosen for so long that I believed it to be fact, it wasn't fact. And let me show you 3 years the difference. Okay. I sit before you today. I have a very successful coaching and consulting business. My clients, and I don't say this to brag, as women, we don't share our successes. We are taught to be humble and quiet. And I'm helping women start to use their voice. Okay. My clients quite literally say to me, "You have changed my life." I am very skilled as a coach. I had a client this last week. I do coach men as well. What tends to happen is I start coaching HR women, and they start showing up differently in the workplace, so much so that their coworkers say, "What are you doing? You're a totally different person." And they're like, "Oh, I hired this coach, Katherine Fry." And they're like, "Give me her number." Right. So because of that, I work with the top person in an organization. He is a male, and he walked into our coaching session last week. I do all of my coaching via Zoom. I like to be able to see my clients' body language. And his shoulders were like this. They were up to his ears. He was so stressed. He was talking so fast. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not how he usually presents himself. By the end of the session, he literally was like, "I feel like I just had a massage. I don't know how you just did that, but I'm calm and I'm ready to go back to my day. Thank you so much." Right? So that's why it's just so, so, so important to know that your life can change. And I'm an example of any senior level HR professionals who, if you're like, "I am done. I know I'm done. I don't know what else is out there," know that I can get you there. Know that through coaching, you can change your life. You can evolve in or out of HR. And it's just realizing the very first thing, just to echo what Jen said, you have to realize what narrative is keeping you stuck. You have to get really real about it. And again, remember, my narrative is I'm not smart enough. Check this out. Check that. I had a speech impediment as a child. I was diagnosed with a learning disability because I now tell myself, "Kath, you are smart. You are smart and you're on the right path." I am now speaking with HRCI at a global event. I get on stage at state SHRM events. I mean, talk about tapping into a higher version of myself, right? All because I saw the thought that wasn't true, something I really truly believed deep down, and it showed up in every aspect of my life. And I have totally negated that thought. And I don't even have to sit there and say, "You're smart, you're smart, you're smart," because I've done the thought work. It's just a part of my being, right? I choose different thoughts so that I can serve my clients and I can help organizations and I can help people get out of their own shitstorm, basically.
I
So
love
fun.
I love that. Yeah, no,
It's so
I
fun.
relate so heavily to that. It's like I'm sitting over here going, "We are the same person,"
We
with
are the
the
same person.
speech impediment and all of that. It's like, how did this happen?
You.
What's that?
I didn't know you had a speech impediment too.
Oh, yeah,
Girl.
I couldn't say my R's. I remember being in 1st grade in speech therapy, 1 was run. The word that I had the hardest time with was world, wold, wold. And so I had to go to speech therapy 3 times a week, and it was humiliating, and I got
Humiliating.
bullied, and so, yeah,
Humiliating. I got bullied
like,
too.
I just love our stories. They're
Okay,
so
do you know
aligned in
I
the
couldn't
right way.
say my R's either. Mine was Wascally Wabbit.
How is this happening? That's so cool.
Wascally Wabbit. And I had to walk down a hill, and the speech therapist was in a trailer. I got pulled out of 2nd grade in front of the entire class.
Yep, yep,
Yep.
1st grade.
And it was embarrassing, and I got bullied, and I couldn't speak properly, all of the things. But here's what I love about it now is I'm like, I'm a 48-year-old grown-ass woman. Am I gonna let that narrative from the 2nd grade impact how I show up today?
Oh,
No.
she did.
Do you ever slip back and not be able to say an R?
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
And it makes me
occasionally.
laugh so hard.
It's the cutest thing.
It's so cute. We're so cute.
So cute.
Jen, you're so wad. You're so rad and wad.
Oh, you're rad.
You're wadical. This is a wadical podcast.
We definitely went over our hour, and it's like,
Oh my God, are we over? We are over. We are over. Okay. Do you want to keep going or do you want to conclude? How are
yeah,
you
we
feeling?
have a couple more questions, or yeah, where are you at?
The last question I have for us today. I'm curious what some essential mental health trainings you think are out there, or any type of training that HR professionals really need to be aware of to include in their L&D, their learning and development curriculums. What do you think needs to be in there that might not be in there related to mental health?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, I was looking at it last fall to do the 8-week Brene Brown's Dare to Lead program.
Stop.
And yeah, I would say for every HR professional out there, if you've never heard of it, or if you have heard of it, definitely check out that program. But that's a really good program. I think here's what I believe is like, when I finally got to a place where I was so much more clear and understood my own mental health better, introducing a program like Dare to Lead, not leave, Dare to Lead to my managers was like one of the greatest gifts that I could ever give,
Wow.
because it's like now I was at a place where I could really, um, yeah, help support their journey through a program like that, because I think there's, so many different, coaching tools and different things that we can use, but that's where for me it keeps coming back to start with you. I
Oh,
think the more that
beautiful.
we can start with ourselves, the more that we're going to be able to become at a place where whatever it is that we're going to offer in our work environments is going to come from such a different place. It's hard to even describe
Yeah.
what I even mean by that. And I think if you go back and listen to this entire episode and our other 10 episodes, you might understand. But when you really get to a truly different place, like I said, I'm not the same person I was from several years ago. The offerings that you will be able to give from that
Oh,
place
Jen.
is spectacular.
I'm starting to tear up.
It's
Yes.
the best word I could come up with. It's spectacular
Yes.
because I just really believe that. And again, it's hard for me to even kind of come up with the right words of why, but that's the truth of it. And so
Yeah.
there's 5,000 different things that you can offer from that place, but it's that place where you truly know yourself, and that way you can be able to kind of serve from a place that you're grounded, you know, you're full of love for yourself, all those things that I think what we're talking about in terms of like how we get there, that flossing mentally is going to then get you to a place that you are going to offer just the best possible thing for your team. So
Yeah.
I didn't really give a great answer, but I also gave a great answer.
I think you gave a great answer. And you just made me realize that if it's not obvious to our listeners, the whole reason that the podcast episode is called Mental Floss is we floss our teeth, right? We brush our teeth. It's a habit. It is just something we do because we've been doing it for so long. And mental floss is all about just developing this new habit of staying on top of your mental health. It's daily and it's small. It doesn't have to take up a ton of time. My ethos method, I use it every morning. It takes me less than 5 minutes to get myself prepared for the day. And I come back to it throughout the day.
Yeah.
Because if something pings me, right? If I get, I call it pinging, right? Like I'm so laser focused on helping my clients, but if something happens, like I was coming back from a conference in Miami and my flight was delayed by 2 hours. And the old me would have gotten super frustrated, super bent out of shape. But I was like, okay, how are you going to maximize the use of this time? And I was able to just get so much more work done. I couldn't control the plane showing up late in Denver, and I was going to miss the last flight back home where I live in Aspen. And it's funny, I was thinking about manifestation. I'm not a big manifester, but I was like, okay, I'm going to manifest this. And I'm just going to say, you know what? It's all going to be okay. No matter what happens, it's all going to be okay. And you just keep working. And I just sat on the plane and I worked, and I wasn't like so focused on we're late. I'm not going to make my flight. I was like, just keep working. Just keep working on your canvas. Keep working on the promotions for your future HR. Just keep working. And the plane landed. I walked. That's not true. I did run to my gate. I did have to run, but I love to run. And I got there 5 minutes before the last plane to Aspen went. And I chose thoughts of, you can't control it. Just stay calm and keep working. There's nothing you can do. And it was just the totally opposite of how I used to respond when I traveled. I was a nervous flyer. I was super afraid on planes. I had a plane when I was in the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. Our plane was struck by lightning. We lost power. We plummeted, all those things. I know.
What?
I've been deathly afraid of flying, but now I just do the thought work. And I'm like, okay, for me, I'm not being prescriptive about the thoughts for me are, you have such a small probability of passing away in a plane crash than you do versus getting in a car. So this is very safe. You're going to be fine. And then there was some movie years ago where they say most planes, this helps me. Most planes crash within the first 60 seconds. So I just sit there and I love takeoff. I think it's so exhilarating. But once the wheels go up, I count in my head. I count to 60. And the minute I get to 60, I'm like, cool, we're fine. And I used to have to take diazepam. I used to have to take a pill to get on a plane to numb my brain. But now I know how to do the thought work to stay calm before I'm flying, during flying, and after I'm done flying. So thought work's everything, ladies. I'm telling you, it's everything, at least for me.
Lightning strike to a plane. Holy shit, Katherine.
Oh, and then I was hiking when I was probably about 22 or 23. I was on a hike in the middle. I worked at a health club. We all had to do MOD shifts, manager on duty. I was an HR director at the time. And so I closed the club. I closed the facility. It was a 77,000 square foot facility. We had 200 employees. It was amazing. And my shift was from 1 to 9 because I had to come in and deal with, after the 9 to 5, I had to be there for any emergencies. So I went for a hike. I drove up Independence Path. I went for a hike. I had just started my hike and I heard a plane sputtering. And I turn around and there is a single engine plane heading right for me. I swear to God, I swear on my life this happened. So I ducked and I covered, I was like, oh my God, it's crashing. And it crashed a few hundred yards before me. So I ran down. The pilot, his passenger got out. They were fine.
Whoa.
So Isn't that wild? I literally thought a plane was going to take me out. I was in the middle of the Colorado wilderness. It was wild, and they were fine. But a thought that I chose, I was quoted in the local paper because they interviewed me, and I said I thought I was going to be decapitated. I'm not kidding. I really thought I was going to die. And I lived. And to witness a plane crash, I was like, okay, what are the odds that you're going to die in a plane crash? So I think about that too. I'm always thinking, like, what are the odds? What are the odds? And that helps me lessen my anxiety. Again, I had general anxiety disorder. I was an anxious person. And now I don't have it anymore because I do thought work.
Wow.
I know. I have a lot of good stories. They're all coming out today, Jen. I don't know what's happening.
The fact that the pilot and co-pilot survived.
They survived.
Oh my gosh, that's
And I had snacks for my hike. So I was like giving them my snacks because they were a little, I was like, are you hungry? Like, I didn't know what to do. Like, are you hungry?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, tangent. Yeah. Any other trainings, Jen, you think should be in people's learning and development curriculum?
I do want to end by saying, what we talked about earlier, around mental health and how far it's come in both HR and just in the world around us, right?
Yeah.
We've come so far. We've
So far.
come so far, right? There's not a single person on this planet that can't say that there's some kind of evolution around, the things that we never talked about that now we talk about, right? Pick your poison.
100%.
But, I think with that is such a beautiful gift that keeps unfolding. And, we keep being able to kind of see the fruits of these gifts. And part of that really is about what we talk about that we have not before, and the courage to be able to talk about the things that we would have never talked about before. I mean, both you and I, Katherine, we're
Absolutely.
talking about things that 1 year ago, I don't know, I would not have talked publicly about. And I think
Totally.
it's because you get to a point where you're like, what am I worried about? Like, what is it we're so worried about? And so
Yeah.
the more that we can kind of start to get that mindset within ourselves, in the work environment, in our lives in general, the more that, like, our truth is going to just be ever present. And so from that place, I think, again, that's where you're going to start to be able to make some shifts and moves in ways that you just never really even knew possible. And so in terms of tools, open your mind, open your heart, because they are all out there. And in terms of like what really fits with you, it's, gosh, what a beautiful problem to have.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
What about you? Anything else resonate for you before we?
Well, just in terms of learning and development curriculums, I think many organizations are progressive enough to teach emotional intelligence or talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace. What I recommend is teaching thought intelligence. It's the precursor to emotional intelligence, and it's one of the free workshops I have available on my app. So I have an app. I created an app. It's available on Apple because, I did that when I blew out my knee. So a lot of people, when they go into surgery, they're like, oh God, I'm really afraid. And I was like, thank God this happened. Thank God this happened, because now I have time to like do more thought work. And I use that recovery time to create an app for HR women. I feel very passionately about helping HR women, right? And the very first freebie in there is the workshop on thought intelligence and why like how you can incorporate thought intelligence into your learning and development curriculum. So just reach out to me. The best way to get a hold of me is Katherine at marblepeakconsulting.com. So I'm happy to just, give you, the access is there, but if you need more information on my app, I can get that to you. I think the other just small thing I want to share is the skill of curiosity. It is a skill. And I think it's really imperative for us as HR practitioners to teach that skill in the workplace. We have to learn it as HR professionals to counteract the judgment, to counteract the negativity bias that our brains are hardwired for, Jen, that you talked about in the very beginning. So that is the antidote. It's developing that skill of curiosity. And I highly recommend, if you're in HR, put it in your job descriptions. Let people know that it's an expectation. But you have to train people, because this is not something that we were taught growing up. It's something that neuroscientists have proven is a skill that we need to counteract that negativity bias. So put it in your learning and development training curriculum. And with your interviewing questions, when you're interviewing new people, make sure that they hopefully, ideally, have that skill of curiosity and ask really high level questions to make sure that people you're bringing into your organization are curious. They're curious about themselves. They're curious about others, as opposed to the type of employee who engages in blame and shame. It's management's fault. It's your fault. It's everybody else's fault. I'm late to work, right? When we engage and we indulge in the blame and shame game, those aren't the types of people that we want in our organization. And if they don't have that awareness of curiosity already, if they're stuck in those patterns of blame and shame, absolutely, you can coach them out of it. But if you don't have the time and resources to do it, and you just want to immediately bring in high performers, highly curious individuals, that's something that I recommend HR practitioners really just up level a little bit.
Wow, I love that so much. I think, I am in the process of reading a book right now called The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander. And it is so amazing, because I think so many of us can get really caught into, that it really, I hate using the word, but like this victim mindset, right? When everything is happening to us, and it gets so difficult to see the possibilities everywhere at any time, right? Like, so your flight situation and almost being late for coming back is such a great example of that. That is, we have that opportunity all the time.
All the time.
Possibilities, regardless of the circumstances that are in front of us. And so, such a great, so it's such a great thing to be thinking about, is like having that awareness to, those who are, around us, and kind of seeing it in action. That's another, thing I'd leave all of us with today, is like, pay attention. Like, even if you're not making change today, tomorrow, or the next day, start noticing. Start challenging yourself to notice not only yourself, right? That's the hard one, right? Like, really noticing how often we kind of go into those spirals, but then also noticing for those around us, because that's going to really help us in terms of like recognizing that path of being able to start to kind of change. So
absolutely. Noticing is the first step. 100%. Just notice your thoughts today, because you have the power to choose your thoughts. 100%. I love that. I love that. And that's a great thing to end on. Jen, thank you so much. I cannot wait to experience the eclipse from where I am in Colorado. I can't wait to hear about your experience. I really can't. I can't wait to hear about your experience with it today, and everybody who's in the place where, you get to experience it a little more intimately. So all the things, Jen, thank you so much for today. This is remarkable. Thank you for always your vulnerability. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Your one small little takeaway, just start noticing your thoughts. Very first step. And remember, your thoughts will be true for you 100% of the time. And you have the ability to choose them every damn day. So every day is a great day to try. Everyone.
Bye, everybody.